dive into our plate of the day, our main topic. And today we're going to talk about the color of love, right? So Denisse, you talk a lot about, you started and you shared a bit about your boo, your beta boo, and how you found him. But I want to know, in terms of the dynamic that you guys have, being an interracial couple. So I want to unpack that a bit more. This season, we are unpacking the intersection of Black lives. And I think Black love is really important. And I think that Black women oftentimes are at the center of criticism of how we do or don't show up for our communities and how we, present things, or how we do or don't support the men in our own communities. And so suddenly choices like who we love become the center of who you are as a person and what you think about your Blackness and your identity, which I personally think is fucked up. But I also have actually never been at the center of an interracial relationship. I've never dated a white guy before. And not because I'm like, fuck white guys, just because I grew up in a time when, like, I was really into like Linkin Park and all that stuff on top of it, popping on my regular culture. But for some reason, because I had Jay-Z talking about girls, 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 but then I had, other people like rock songs talking about love and beauty. And I'd always be like, these white boys are so romantic. I just, oh my God, I really want a white boy. And I used to like be proud and parade this idea that I knew I was going to be with a white guy, but it was very much rooted in a toxic mindset around this idea that white guys are better because Black guys are emotionally unavailable, rowdy, and don't know how to love their women. I've grown out of that. That was something that happened in high school, and I was in high school with white boys for the first time ever in my life. Oh my God, it was a revolution. And I think that sort of experience subconsciously made me fall back from, even as an adult, being like, oh, I'm aggressively chasing white guys. But it also set me up, or high school at least fucked me up in the way where it was like none of those white boys liked me. So I had this like notion in my head that it's not that I'm against interracial dating, it's that I don't fit the mold of what these people see in their future. And otherwise, when they're looking at their Thanksgiving table, like I don't look good at the family table. It's what I always struggled with. But I'm glad to know so many people who navigate these relationships and have insights on how untrue that can be, and how, like, though my experience is a valid one, that there are other experiences and there's not just one way that these things go. But before we even go into unpacking all of those dynamics, I want to hear from you. When you were growing up and you dreamt about what love would look like for you and your future was, what did that image look like for you? How does your current reality differ? And how does your current reality differ from that?
Oof. When I was growing up, I come from like a very dysfunctional. My parents had a very dysfunctional relationship. I think a lot of people can relate to the story. It's very normal where we come from. So I really wanted to be alone. Like I was really just like, I'm gonna be a badass. I'm gonna get out of this small town. I'm gonna, do really big things. I'm gonna get, if I ever want children, I'm gonna adopt or get a surrogate or something like that. And I'm just gonna be a badass woman raising children on my own. And so I never really I was never trusting, in love. Like it was just it was a lot of people, like I come from a very religious background too. So it was a lot of people getting married really young because that's what like the Bible said to do, or that's how evangelical culture is. Like you get married really young so that you don't sin and you could just, have sex and not feel bad about it. And then you're 20 with like 3 kids and you hate everything, So I was surrounded by a lot of that. And so that, even just growing up, like seeing different relationships, and I was just like, oh, like, isn't that like Hermanita's husband with otra Hermanita in the corner? Like things like that, where I just had no trust for people. And so I was just like, okay, like I'm self-sufficient and independent enough where I don't need this. So it was never something I desired. Like I never looked at like the Disney movies and was like, I can't wait to find my Prince Charming to come save me from the hood. Like I just was like, whatever. So it obviously differs now, because even up until when I went right before I met my husband, I was still like trying to be Shonda Rhimes, who's one of my favorite people ever. And I was just like, Shonda ain't got no man. She got 100,000 TV shows. Like Grey's Anatomy's been around for like 80 years. Like that shit gonna be around when she dies. Like she's just so powerful and amazing. And that's who I want to be. Like I want to emulate her. Like I want to just have my own little, clique. I want my own little family, but just me. And then obviously I met him and that all changed. And so my life is completely different from where I thought I'd be.
Nice. And I think I love that was your answer, because I think like in my head I was like, because I'm the opposite, like mine was the opposite. I grew up with parents who, they're gonna have 41 years of marriage in January, and
wow.
my mom, like my dad was my mom's first a lot of things from what I know, because they tell, there's the stories they want to tell, and then there's the truth.
They be lying.
so to my knowledge, right, and so I've always had this setup around love that is very Disney princess, that is very not even rescue complex, because I've never felt the need to be rescued, but I've always imagined like the nucleus, like the family, but that I myself am a bad bitch in that. Like I imagine like I've always imagined power couples, and my parents in a way are a power couple, even though like they're not Jay-Z and Beyonce in terms of like what their job is, but the way that they work within the systems that they do participate in feels very power couple-y. So I've always had that image in my head, and the need to have someone. So to have that be switched from a very like independent, like just me mindset, into finding someone who actually is like, yeah, partner, you know what I mean? And it's just like, that is so beautiful. So I'm also curious, what challenges or benefits, as some would say, have you faced in dating someone outside the culture? And I put that in quotes because culture, I think like there's the cultural identity that has to do with your ethnicity and stuff like that. But then there's like cultures of things that people like and that are common. Like, you know what I mean? Like if somebody's really into hip hop culture, and to a degree, does that give them a pass that's a black card if they're not black? No, but like there is a commonality in a culture, right? So like this idea that you date outside the culture, it's like, well, what's outside? Like how many boxes are we really checking here? Is it just a skin color? Because culturally we connect for a reason.
Yeah.
But what are some challenges or benefits that you face in dating outside the culture?
Yeah, I think I'll start off really vulnerable. When I first started dating my husband, I was like fucking around with therapy. Like I was making great money in the city, shooting everybody. So I was just like, here's whatever a week for me to pretend I'm telling you my problems. And then I realized like, so the guy that I dated before that was white, and I've only ever had like one Latinx boyfriend. So I was like, okay, I grew up hearing things like, oh, mira, el novio de, so and so, blanquito, va a tener pelo bueno, the eyes are going to be nice, y hay que mejorar la raza, and things like that. Not from my family in particular, like my immediate family, but just like friends and other family members. And so one of the things that I did, because I'm like hyper self-aware, is I went to therapy and I was like, I need to know that I'm not just pursuing this person because he is well off, white, established. And like I need to know that this is not just me succumbing to like the societal norms or the societal desires of my culture and like my family. Like you do better. Like, you get out of like, what do? You get out of the hood. You get the person that's gonna help you get the car. You get whatever. Like you get the dude with the good credit score. Like things like that I would hear people say. And so that was a really big challenge for me because like I come from just a personality where I used to self-sabotage a lot. So I was like, I really want this to work. And so I'm gonna need to do like a lot of self-reflection, because like, is this what I really want as a person? Like, is this what Denisse wants? Or is this what Denise's family wants? And it is so ingrained in me that I am making these lifelong decisions based on what I think will make me a better person or give me the life that I'm supposed to have. So that's number one. And then just like challenges. We don't really like my husband embraces the culture, like I'll play like bachata on Saturdays or something if I'm cleaning, or like salsa, merengue, whatever, and he'll just like pretend to sing along and like be dancing in the kitchen, like. And I mean, we mentioned it before, but my husband's white, like he's 100% gringo, does not know a lick of Spanish. I think that the only thing that he knows how to say in Spanish is like "Yo soy el fuego," and that is his like answer to everything. So he'll just be like I'll be saying something, he'll be like "Yo soy el fuego." So like he's very, you know, he loves my mom's food. Like we do have like very different palates, and that's been a challenge too culturally, because even like where I come from, like I lived in Little Mexico in Jersey, so I'm like, them tacos are legit. And I'm like, here is some weird Tex-Mex shit where everything got cheese. And like, and I'm like, that's not a taco, bro. Like, what is this? It's like we have different palates. We just, even culturally, like you said, like we do things differently, you know, like we just operate differently, like not just ethnic cultural differences, but even just like coast differences. Like people on the West Coast are so different from people on the East Coast. Like we had a quick incident, unrelated, but I just think it's such a trifling story that I'm gonna just tell it. So 2 nights ago, right? We got these neighbors that we can't stand. They're renters, and my Amazon groceries got delivered to their house, right? So we have cameras everywhere because I don't trust nobody out here. So I was like, we getting cameras like both ways and alert me of everything. And we saw him like pick up the groceries, put them in his house, and then just drive off to whatever. So we went, knocked on the door. My husband went, knocked on the door, and his wife was home, but she didn't open. They rarely do. Like we've had issues with them before, and they never answered the door. And so my husband wrote a note. He was like, "All right, so basically this is what's gonna happen: return our groceries or the $60 that we paid for them. Like they belong next door, whatever." So homeboy returns our groceries, right? And like puts he staples like a federal law thing that says that he is not legally obligated to return anything to us, right? Yeah, un maldito loco. And so like culturally, I wanted to approach this very differently. Like I was 100% ready to physically fight a grown ass man. Like 100% ready. What they gonna do? Put me in jail? Like my husband's white. Ain't nobody doing that to me, you know. But I was really like just so ready to just throw up. Like somebody do that shit to you in the Bronx, it's a wrap.
Yeah,
like,
that is a full fight. Like,
give me my groceries. You about to come to the bodega with me, and you get in next week's groceries too. Like this ain't ending here. Like we fight. Needless to say that you don't know my situation. What if like I didn't have any money and somebody, you guys gifted those groceries to me because I was struggling or something like that, whatever. It was a lot. But even just that situation where my like West Coast, like nice, calm people are just like, oh, it's groceries, we'll get a refund, like whatever. And I was like, it's the principle of things. Like I'm ready to fight. Where my Tim's at? Like you just don't do that shit. Like he needs to know I'm not the one. Like he needs to know that he can't ever fuck with me ever again in his life. Like so aggressive. And so we've had like situations like that where I just, he comes from a very calm and like chill family. And I come from a lot of, just aggression and just like, like we're just always ready, even in like good ways and bad ways. Like I stay ready so I don't gotta get ready. Right. Right. And so that's been like just a funny challenge sometimes. But one of the things that like I've been learning to work through is like learn from him. He's also 7 years older than me. So he's like, okay, like, well, like you gotta think like you're too pretty to be somebody's girlfriend in jail. Like, come on. Like you gotta just relax. Like things like that where it's like, okay, you're right. Like I'm not thinking this through, like just where I come from, that is how we resolve things, like with words. With we throw elbows, like that's just who I grew up around. But other than that, like it's been like beautiful just to see him embrace my culture, to see how a lot of his family members have just embraced me, and just like have made me feel right at home. it's been like it's been really lovely. You know, it's a learning experience every day, especially during the pandemic when like there is nowhere to go. Like we're seeing each other every day, so we're learning a lot about each other all the time. We're literally together, you know, 24/7. Like I'm in my office, he has his office, which is great, because we get to like have that separation when we need it. But it's still been, you know, like, well, I deal with this way. Like, okay, like I'm in survival mode. You know where we come from. It's like something like this is like we're saving everything. Like la funda that this came in, we're saving it because we don't know when we're gonna have a food bag. And like, you know, the container, like we're saving that. We don't know what's gonna happen. Like with COVID, what if they stop making containers? And it's like I immediately go into like that panic, like, all right, well, doomsday. Like I remember my family was one of the really religious families that prep for Y2K. Like, so I'm like Y2K mode. Like we're gonna have spaghettios in the basement for 10 years. Like we're gonna be ready. And he's just like, yeah, you know, I don't think it's gonna happen. I think we're gonna be okay. And just like learning from him in that way, and just learning, you know, how I mean, like if we're keeping it G too, like a lot of one of the coolest things that my husband ever taught me, um, you know, he's like, when you go negotiate a deal, when you go into a meeting, he's like, just think like a white man. We don't ask questions. Like I've heard him. When he was negotiating his salary for this job, I was like, I think we're good. Like you good. They're gonna take the job away from you. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, no. He's like, I'm sure they can give me more. Like they're a big company. Like I can get more, you know, or like whatever. Like I'm like, oh, like is that how you're gonna email your boss? Like what? You're not even gonna say? He's like, they don't give a shit. And I'm like, wow, like these people really just be out here with the confidence of like 1,000 suns. Like they just don't care. And I've like, you know, I've adopted that confidence and be like, okay, like I'm actually a powerful like Black woman, and I'm just gonna take that same confidence because why not? Because I deserve it too, you know. And he's like, he's always just saying like, you know, you're so much smarter than me, like you're so much capable than I am in so many different areas. Like all you need is that confidence. Like these people, these unqualified people that we see in these positions that are normally white or you know of different ethnicities that we're just like, yo, how the fuck is Susan getting like promoted again for the 10th time while I'm sitting here my 8th year here, like still behind the desk? And you're just like, because Susan's out here taking what's hers and she's not asking questions. She's just like, hey, I'm due for a raise. This is how much I want, or I walk. Where we are so used to like uncertainty and you know, we have that fear of failure. Like it's so ingrained in our culture. And that fear of like, you know, like in our culture, we take care of our parents. So it's like, I got to keep this job because my parents can't take care of me. Like I'm basically like, I got to take care of them. You know, I can't, my siblings can't take care of me. Like we, you know, we grow up with like the only person we can rely on is ourselves as much as our family members love us. And so we don't make those decisions with that notion because it's like that risk is too much for me. And so for them, it's just like, fuck it, give me the raise or I'm out. Yeah, I ain't gonna fire me, you know? And so things like that culturally have really, really just benefited my confidence personally, my business personally. Like I've made so much more money. Like my husband's been like, add another zero to that ask. And I'm like, another zero? Like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm about to lose this whole campaign. Like, are you nuts? He'd be like, add another zero. And they'd be like, okay, we can do that, you know? And it's just like, what? Like, what the hell? So just things like that where I mean, it's a lot less like lovey-dovey, but just culturally it's been a ride.
Yeah, no, it's the safety of knowing that like it's someone who knows you, sees you, loves you, that's guiding you, and not somebody who would recommend, and somebody who'd be honest with you. Like I get the impression that like if there were a situation where he'd be like, oh honey, your blackness is going to play a different role here, I can say as a white man, like I trust based off of like the way in which you guys work together that he would be able to do that. And he is not like a lot of times when I hear arguments from Black men who are against this idea of Black women dating white men, it's always this concept that like, oh well, they'll like subjugate us to a degree, or you know, they'll accessorize us to a degree, and there's never this idea that there's perhaps this level of empowerment or go-getterness that exists yes, in the posture of white people, right? And it's not a malicious you know, it doesn't come out of malice. It's just they've lived in a different reality, and so the confidence with which they move is a different reality.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the difference between somebody who knows and is woke versus somebody who's not is understanding the moments where the gift and the gem is not just you go, honey, like yeah.
Yeah.
Wrap that hair before bed, sunshine. Like, you know, it's
Yeah.
not down with the typical, it's being able to say, oh, I know what usually the case is, but like move like this, like make the, like, you know what I mean? Like encouraging your women and supporting them in that way. And I think the way support looks like for some of our Black men, and I'm speaking very cishet right now, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
of other, but because the stereotypes of these gender norms, men versus women, are so strong. I think the way the Black man is told he has to care for the Black woman is very different than what the white male thinks he has to care about a woman in general, right? Like the way is different. And so I feel like there is a freedom for men who aren't Black to really be able to dive into a different level, and our men too, if they're willing to go there, if they're willing to
Yeah.
get out of the, you know, the cultural norms in the sense of that culture of gender norm culture. So I'm actually curious, what are some of the misconceptions that people have about dating? Like, you know, some people, like, whether it's sexual misconceptions or just dynamic misconceptions that people might have about you and your relationship, or just you specifically in the relationship, or how your husband is in the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one we've gotten is that I'm a racist because I'm
Oh,
dating a white man. Like, that's a thing I get often, especially when like Black Lives Matter started. I mean, I've always been very vocal about race and, you know, and underserved communities and everything. But I get a lot of like when I got married, I mean, a couple months ago, like I posted screenshots of just people that were just like, I hope you get COVID and die. Like you don't love Black people. Like you're sitting here, you're a fraud. You're just doing it for likes. Like if you love Black people, you'd be supporting a Black man and not like, you know, like I've had people that have been like, do you think your husband actually loves you? Like you don't think that he's sitting there with his friends saying like, I finally got a Spanish maid who's gonna just take care of me for the rest of my life and shit like that. So there's a lot of like hateful misconceptions where people project their biases and their racism and their whole internal shit show on your relationship, especially on the internet, where like these keyboard warriors just be saying whatever the fuck comes out their ass at any time. So there's a lot of that. Then there's like silly ones, like, oh, like, you know, does he complain about the smell of like the food, you know, because white people's food just be smelling like lemon pepper and that's it. Like, see, like when you're making sazon, like, does he complain, you know, whatever, like, does he like, is it weird? Like they'll think he thinks it's weird. They think, you know, personally in my family, like because I'm, you know, I share a lot on the internet. I try to be like super vulnerable, whatever, but I'm also a fiercely private person. And so like I am private offline and online. I'm extremely private offline, especially when it comes to like my family. Because I come from a very large family. My mom has 17 brothers and sisters. I have a quadrillion cousins, and my dad's family is big too. So I really try to like just control, you know, I curate like the information that's out there in real life about me too. And so because of that, because now everyone has met my husband or really knows who he is, there's a lot of like, oh, you know, he doesn't let her do anything, like he has her out there sequestered or something, you know, like she hasn't visited us through a pandemic because he doesn't let her. Like, no, bitch, I just ain't trying to die. Like things like that that we get. And just like other than that though, I think because I've been so vocal from the jump about like this is what it is, like this is my husband, I love him, he loves me, he supports me, like my man's is out here like literally just being the most, he took a year off of work to work with me and learn my business, um and lived off of like his savings so that I could get established here, you know, like that's like not everyone can say that they have a partner who is willing to do that, you know, who's willing to actually invest in you that way. Like I always have like ideas and shit, you know, and he's just like, all right, cool, like bring me a pitch, like whatever. If you think if you can bring me good numbers, like let's do it. We'll invest in ourselves, you know? And just like where people think it's just like boring all the time, or like, you know, like the like you said, like the sex is whack or whatever. Like I am very happy. Let me just tell everyone, I am very
Let's be
happy.
clear.
Let's be very clear. I am extremely happy. Um, so it's just like stupid stuff. Like people read like Jezebel and BuzzFeed articles and think that they can make assumptions about shit.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly it's just, I think the most like the things that you think about are like they're really like hateful misconceptions where you're just like, damn, how you even like got the time to think about shit like that?
Word. Do you think earlier on in the dynamic, and you mentioned you dated a white guy before, but and maybe this happened with the previous partner, was there ever a moment of just like a not fear, anticipation, like an anticipation of this might go different because this is a white person, and not because you have any personal opinion about white people, that's whatever, but just based off of the reality we've grown up in, was
Yeah.
there ever a moment, and if so, how did you get past that?
My previous relationship before my husband, his name is Chase. So my previous relationship before Chase was very different. Like that was like a whole different animal. That was like the stereo, like what you would think every stereotype is like in an interracial relationship. That was it. Like, did not believe that my job was a real job. So he used to submit like secretly submit applications for me for like corporate jobs all the time. And I would get these jobs like come in, like, oh, we loved your resume, like come in for this interview. And I'm like, who the fuck is this? Like, what?
What?
And just things like that. Or was like, okay, like here's our 10-year plan. Like you know, you can't just be out here shooting little bloggers forever, like or whatever it is that you're doing, families. Like he's like, that's not a real job, that's not reliable. Like, you know, we need to have $20,000 in the bank at all times. So this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna quit your job, we're gonna get married, you're gonna have children, and I'm gonna get this promotion, and then you're just gonna be a stay-at-home, you know, things like that.
Oh no.
Where I was just like, yeah, that's not what I'm about. Like, that's definitely not. So it's definite, like you said before, like it's that was a whole different dynamic that really like just shifted. And I've had like friends that have dated that have been in interracial relationships where it's like that. Like I am the superior person because of who I am,
Mm.
you know, and so let me fix you, let me help you, you know, you haven't had the opportunities that I've had, and it's not like let me help you get those opportunities. It's like, you know, just sit down and let me just figure this out for you, because you don't know, like you just don't know.
Mm,
And so you see a lot of that.
mm. And what about with the families? Like I know for me, like I said, one of my fears is like they won't want me at the Thanksgiving table. Like,
I mean, I have those that
mm,
still don't, you know, I still
mhm.
show up. The fuck what are they gonna do? Not feed me? Like, bitch, I bought the macaroni. Like, I don't care, you know, or you just don't show up. You know, there are people that say things, you know, and I've had to learn, and I'm still learning. I'm a very confrontational person. I'm a very like, I don't do the like, oh, tú no viste lo que dijo, you know,
Mhm.
Skittles. That's really like, no, like I'm just like, hi Skittles. So it has occurred to me that, you know, whatever. Like that's the kind of person I am, because I don't like to run around, you know. So just even learning to navigate that has been interesting culturally. You know, but there are those, and if you're thinking of being in an interracial relationship, if you're interested, if you're in one, like you're just gonna have, especially right now in today's societal climate, you are going to have, you're gonna hear shit
People
about
talking.
you. You're gonna, you know, you're gonna have people that don't want you at the dinner table for the rest of your life, and that's okay. You know, like we've had to set very strong, we've had to sit down and have very serious conversations and set very strong boundaries around both of our families and our
Mm.
relationship. And, you know, at the end of the day, that's the person that I get in bed with. That's the person that I watch TV on the couch with. That's the person that I share a life with and that I do life with. And that is the opinion. Unless I am in danger and y'all see that like some shit is going down and y'all need to help me, like it doesn't really matter, because that's the person that I've committed to spending the rest of my life with. And so if I'm good with him, if my dog still loves me, like we're good. That's all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I love and thank you for saying that, because I think that it also fleshes out this point, which is a point I try to make when people start doing the whole like, oh well, interracial couples, da 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 da. I'm like, well, I once dated a Puerto Rican who could be white. I mean, depending which room you put him in. Like, if he was in a room full of Anglo-Saxon Proud Boys, he would stand out. But if he was just like in a crowd of like white people, brunettes, he could pass. His grandfather was Russian, and then his Latinx side was Puerto Rican. I was going to say Puerto Rican. I don't know why, but Puerto Rican. And it was interesting, to know that like even within that dynamic, there were certain threads of my blackness that were screaming in the same ways they would have if I was dating a white guy, because there are white people in our community, or there are people who, even though they're not white, they carry that posture of white supremacy, essentially, because is what it's rooted in, right? And so I always find it so interesting when people are so anti-interracial marriage, like people who are very deeply, profoundly, and I'm like, wow, until Black cultures across the world themselves can even get on the same page. And I don't want to hear us bringing down and tearing down people who are dating interracially, because race is not always at the forefront of the relationship. There are other things that are at the forefront of a relationship. But in this climate, I do see, and I didn't realize that you would get these types of messages, but I do see in comment threads people like threatening and trying to dethrone people from their blackness because they're dating a white person. And I think that there's such duality that can exist. I think that it can be true that there are certain situations where there are white people in the world who do date people and don't actually acknowledge the cultural differences and struggles that they might have. And so in a moment like, today, they're not a good partner in supporting somebody who's horrified because they're following Breonna Taylor or George Floyd or whatever case is, right? There are those that is a real thing, but I think it kind of has to go back to sometimes the Black person, because sometimes you have Black people who don't give a fuck about those things deeply in the way that we all do too. So this idea that the loss of a Black warrior comes when they engage with a white person is false, because sometimes we lose those Black warriors to, I want to survive in corporate America, and so I'm gonna fucking sell out and do some shit. Sometimes it's about bigger things, and we're not attacking in the same way, and it really frustrates me to see that. And again, I'm not in a place where I'm specifically like, oh, I'm not dating white guys because I don't want to disappoint the culture, in the way that I'm like, oh, I don't want to blow dry my hair because I don't want to disappoint the culture. But girl, I'm so close. You know what I mean? But also, like, I feel like, interestingly enough, this argument comes up and it becomes a fork in the road for me in my dating life. I'm like, wow, like, can I date a white guy? Like, can I do and you kind of have to go down that rabbit hole. And so in what you said, it's really about what is the trust building in the relationship and the dynamic I have with the person who I sleep with at the end of the day. That is what it is, because is the same way that you are not responsible for all of Black America or all, Afro-Latinx people and all that stuff. He is not responsible for all of white America and all the stuff. So why is this self-punishment happening, right? I think that the rule is there are non-negotiables that have to exist, and maybe some of those non-negotiables exist within the racial dynamics of the couple of the relationship. Like, if I dated a white guy, don't ever say nigga in front of me. Like, please don't like, don't, right? Like, let's not do that, right? Like, so that's a thing for me. And so, like, if as long as you have these ground rules, and as long as you have a basic, strong foundational relationship outside of any dynamics except for what are healthy relationships, right? As long as you have that, no matter what bump in the road, no matter what birthday dinner or whatever situation where a tia says something uncomfortable, or maybe he slips up a little bit and you look at him a little sideways like, honey, you know what I mean? Like, that the communication and the foundation of a strong relationship is all that matters at the end of the day.
I agree. I agree. And I love what you said about non-negotiables, because, I will say, like, I will count my blessings. I am so fortunate that none of my personal non-negotiables have ever been surrounded by race. Like, because my husband has just been respectful to not just my culture, but just everyone who is different. Like, he has just been a kind and respectful and accepting human being all around. So I've never had to set a boundary or never had to have a hard conversation, because that's just not who he is. So like my non-negotiables are like, don't ever scream at me, like don't ever, don't ever talk at me. My dad screamed a lot, and so it's something that I struggle with. Like as soon as someone starts screaming at me or yelling at me, I immediately start crying and I shut down. Like so I'm like, you have to be really gentle, you have to be kind. If always call me out on my shit, just you can do that kindly, you can do that gently. And he's always, and I haven't even had to say that. Like the only reason we've talked about it is because I've always thanked him, like thank you for being so gentle and kind. When I have a horrible relationship with finances, I have no financial education at all. And so like he's exceptional at finances, and so when we would have financial conversations, I'd literally just start crying and be like, I don't want to do this, why do I have to be a part of this, like I hate money, why can't I just keep my money in a shoebox? Like why do I need a credit card, things like that, where he, over the years, like he's really taking the time to adapt to what he sees like my non-negotiables are. Like because sometimes if you're obviously we don't date psychics or mind readers or anything like that, so it is important to communicate, but my husband is very great at reading people and reading me, and so like he'll know like, okay, this is a non-negotiable for her, like I know that I cannot approach this conversation in this way because we will not get anywhere. So now I know, like if I want to talk to her about finances, or I want to talk to her about an issue that we're having, then I have to approach it in this way because that's just who she is, and I love her for it. But like, I also have to adapt where I'm a leader and, I'm used to being a supervisor and I'm just like, get it done, blah, blah, whatever. I can't take that same tone with her, with my partner. And so I'm really, really grateful for that. I'm just like naming my non-negotiables. My other non-negotiable is my husband loves Mexican food, and I'm like, we can't have Mexican food every day. Like, we can't. We just can't. I'm sorry. Like we can't, bro. We gotta diversify. Like I know you love your Tex-Mex, but we just can't. And then otherwise though, like I know you're doing the hosting, but do you guys have non-negotiables in relationships?
Yeah, I do have them, and interestingly enough, like I guess because I still haven't had my blanquito yet. I never made them around race specifically also, but yeah, I think a lot of my non-negotiables are even new. I think I've a lack of non-negotiables historically for me has now put me in a place to have non-negotiables. And so some of the ones I've developed is you have to love yourself. You have to love yourself, because I tend to attract broken men. I tend to attract men who sometimes are drawn to me with the like mom complex, even though I don't mean to be momish, but they sometimes lack so much maternal love and intimacy, even that like my hugs and caresses sometimes they gives them the warmth of what they wish they had from their mom. But I'm not trying to be your mother, I'm trying to fuck, like, so it's just like, hello. So I think that like being in that stickiness has become frustrating. So to me, I'm like, I'm ready to date somebody who at least loves themselves. It doesn't mean they're perfect. It doesn't mean they know every single next step in life, but it does mean that they love themselves enough to know that they want to see themselves succeed. And so even when they hit the depths of something, they want to self-rise, and not that I feel like it's going to become my job to have to pull them up every time they get down, which is a dynamic I feel I've had in the past. I think another non-negotiable for me is it's sort of like, in turn, you can't fight me to love you more than I love myself. You can't ask me to give up on certain things that, because in essence, it's like, till death to do us part. It's not the idea of like our journeys as individuals are done. It's just that we're together and we're in it together now. So there has to be this sort of like mutual respect. In the same way, I desire for you to love yourself and to have your own activities and to have your hobbies and to do your things. I encourage that. I need that encouragement back. I certainly am not looking for permission. So if you think it's a permissive thing, and I think this is something that I've seen in Dominican culture so much, which is why I'm so like, it like hearing some of my girlfriends be like, I know I have to call my boyfriend because it's gonna get tight. Or when you out with your friends and there's always that one girl that has the fucking boyfriend that she got to be running back and forth, and she's always on her phone the whole night because her man don't post this picture or don't tag me in this. Like, don't ever catch me being that. Like, it just really, so to me, like, that is a very, very strong non-negotiable to tamper with my independence. Yeah, and I mean, shit, I can go on and on. I have so many, but like, yeah.
No, those are good. I'm always curious. And Skittlez, I want to hear yours next, but I'm always curious because I feel like people don't talk about this openly. Like, people don't talk about a lot of shit openly. So I'm thankful that we're having this conversation. But I feel like people are so just like, my relationship is, especially online, my relationship is perfect. We don't have non-negotiables. Like, we will just suck from the same spaghetti string forever and meet in the middle. Like, and that's just not how it works, you know? So I love hearing that. Skittlez, what are yours? Or some of yours?
I feel like I'm still figuring them out. I think that who I am and in terms of like the role that I play in my community and stuff like that, I tend to attract a lot of down low men or men who like to lead heterosexual lives in the public and then like mess with, you know, queer folk on the side. And so I've had a lot of those experiences. And so I think one of them definitely is like, and I guess this could be them loving themselves as well, but like, you know, accepting yourself and being able to like lead a public life where you're not afraid to where you're okay with knowing that you're attracted to me, you know,
and other people
are able
knowing,
to like show that. Yeah. So definitely that, because, you know, as fun as DL men can be, it's you know, it doesn't go anywhere. I also think that one thing that I figured out is I need someone who is like who has their shit together and like is established and secure. I don't like dealing with people who like I'm someone who's good at being broke. But like I'm not someone who's gonna be wanting to like pay for everything and like, you know. So and at least in the past year or so have been having experiences with people who just don't have that shit together. And it's like, why not? We're too old for you not to have that shit together. And then communication. I hate talking about my feelings, but like also I'm someone who like goes crazy if you leave me like on the ledge of like not knowing what the fuck is going on and not being clear. So someone who definitely can't communicate, because trying to communicate with somebody who doesn't know how to communicate is just like
exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that so much. And I especially love, like, can we just take a second to like give people permission to want and seek established people? Like, there's this weird thing in our culture where you are, you know, are some like love the broken people, like help them through shit. Like, no, man, go to Lowe's and buy some tools. Like, that's not me. That is not me. Like it's so.
Or
it's
like you get the like negative like stigma of being a gold digger or like, you know, stuff like that, just because that is something that's in your mindset. But no, if I'm trying to have my shit together, I need you to have your shit together so that we can have our shit together.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
and
like
so much shame. Like, there is so much shame around that desire. Like, I mean, my husband is very well established, well off, like extremely intelligent. I mean, what he does, and it's like I was like, fuck yeah, like you are going to call me higher. Like, you're even just looking at you like is going to elevate me and you know, like teach me like how'd you do that? How, like, you know, okay, what am I doing wrong in my business? But I'm like, can you, you know, like how the fuck did you do that? Versus, you know, like, all right, I got you this week. Like, just make sure you pay me back, and then I ain't never gonna see that. Like, I don't want to be dating my homeboy from like 7th grade, like that kind of shit. Like, loaning you lunch money, you know, like that's just. And that's so I'm like really glad you said that, and I hope that people that are listening that feel like they need permission to date, like even if it's, you know, what they call like up, or someone who's gonna. I always say just date someone who's gonna call you higher. Like, I don't want to have to just keep breaking my back. Like, I'm all for helping people. I am very passionate about social justice. in underserved communities. I am not trying to be in a relationship with
Yeah,
like, you know, a person who just lives her life around that. Like I've already been on the struggle bus. I grew up on the struggle bus. Like I'm not trying to ride it for the rest of my life. So I
exactly.
love that you said that.
And some like for I feel like it also applies to people who aren't necessarily always self-confident. I feel like for
Mhm.
someone like me who has always been fat, you know, always been big and then always been the gay guy or whatever, it's really easy to fall into that DL secretive world because that's where you're getting that attention. And so then when you start to be able to entertain relationships that are actually public and somebody who's actually like trying to be with you, but they're lacking that like that having shit together. Um, Sometimes it's real easy for you to just kind of accept it because you're like, well, damn, they don't have their shit together, but I'm getting this attention.
Yeah.
Um, and it's one of those things where you just have to grow to be like, nah, I'm not going to accept anything less than what I am accepting. And then
Yes.
that's where you get these non-negotiables from.
I
And so
love it.
what's your take on interracial dating, Skittles?
You know what's crazy? Uh I don't know, like for me, in terms of like my preference, I tend to go toward the melanated portion of the spectrum of men, you know? Um, and that's just my own personal, like, I just don't usually look at the white boys the same way I look at the brown boys, you know? Um,
I love
but
it.
I'm here for it. Like Jessica Williams loves her white boy.
No
And I feel like
way.
and
Just
I feel like it is a big trend in the gay community that black boys love white boys, you know.
mm.
Um, but yeah, like I'm here for it. I know that I personally would love a melanated man, but like fuck it up interracial relationships.
I need a shirt that says that.
Fuck it up interracial relationships.
Can that be like part of your merch?
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, we might pull it. We might pull the quote as a merch. But I think, yeah, no, I think ultimately like sort of where Skittles land is where I've landed in life, where I'm like, I think that my journey into white boys and being obsessed with white boys, like, and then never getting one and feeling very deeply rejected by white people in general, not just white men, really did force me to reframe the focus I had on my own community in a way that I think was good, in a way that was not me feeding into stereotypes that people were saying about the men in my community, and really getting to know the nuances of the men in my community. It just so happens that sometimes these men that are very woke and wise and deep are also very broken. They're very broken, and it takes a lot of their break, like what cracks open their thinking and their perspective and whatnot. But then I need to find the ones who, like, to your point, like, are also in a place where they love themselves enough to be go-getters about something. Like, I'm not even saying, oh, I want a doctor or a lawyer. Like, bro, whatever, like, what do you do? And like, how do you go hard, and how do you, hustle within the love of what you do? Like, that to me is like, that's sexy to me. And I think that with white dudes, like, I'll be 110% fucking honest. I'm even just like, I don't even really know like what white dick is like. Like, I don't know. And then I have a whole like realm of discovery that I haven't had in my sexual life with white men, that I'm like, yeah, like, I hope that, like, many stereotypes tend to be wrong. I hope that I'm not the bitch who falls in love with the dude, and then, the stereotypes of white guys not working it like melanated men.
Christ.
I think I'd be a little sad. I think sex is really important for me in relationships.
Yes.
And so I feel like, yeah, my like resistance to white dudes is just kind of like, I'm never like, yeah, that white dick. And not that anyone should be that way or say like, black dick.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, there's just like an appetite I've developed with the men I've been with, and it just so happens I haven't been with white men, so I don't have a natural appetite that comes from the sexual shit. And so like, when I just meet them at face value, what I actually have to do is work backwards from a potential assumption that they're either boring, super white, or sometimes when they're white boys who try to be down, that they're a little too down and they get a little too comfortable, and that turns me off. So I have so many like layers to take off before like pants down and I'm ready, that I am going to, you know, it's going to take some time, I think, but I'm not against it. But I'm just saying I got to taste it first before I really commit, because I don't know.
I love that that's a stereotype. Like, it's not one that I've heard often, but I do love that that's like an actual stereotype. Yeah. That's so interesting.
It's harder to get a good dick print out of a white guy is what I've, you know.
I mean, I can confidently say I don't have that problem.
You can see hope.
I mean, my husband comes from the pipeline industry, so he's pretty good at laying pipe.
Hey,
is all I'll say.
Come on.
I'm here for it. Well, thank you so much for diving into that conversation with us. I think that, and I mean, there's so many different directions that this can take. And like, I think there's the idea around interracial relationship that I just really want to get across is that knowing your relationship with the inputs you do give in your content, it feels very much to me to be a relationship that's driven around the foundations of healthy relationships and not around this idea that you guys are together and at the forefront of the relationship is this navigation of where you guys come from. Like, that is not the first thing that matters in your dynamic. And I think it's important to hear stories, because people dissect interracial couples all the time and then talk about the psyche of, like, you know, the Black woman or the Black man and what that means. I get all of that, but I also think that there's a way in which we need to make room for the realities that exist for some people, which is it's not always that deep.
Yeah, it's not. That's not the social part.
Yeah.
And go, oh, here I am in my interracial bed with my. You know what I mean?
We're not all Julia Stiles and fucking Save the Last Dance.
You know, oh my God. Like, I just feel like it's important to highlight that and to celebrate that and make room for that. We have to make more room for successful interracial love stories where it's not like all devastation and you're being like subjugated. No.
Yeah, no. I'm not walking around calling nobody master. So
yes. Maybe daddy sometime.
Maybe daddy.
Yeah, maybe daddy. Daddy comes out every once in a while.
All right. Well, thanks again so much for being with us here today. This has been super, super dope. Let us know, where can we find you? Anything coming up that we should be looking out for?
So thank you for having me. This was so much fun. I've been okay. If anyone else whose guest I've been is listening, turn this off now. This is probably my favorite podcast experience ever. And I've done a bunch of these, and this is hands down my favorite ever. It literally feels like I'm just sitting like in a living room in the Bronx with y'all. It feels like home. It feels like home. So thank you for having me. You can find me on every platform except for TikTok, because I just cannot. My brain can't. Under Chasing Denisse with 2 S's. I have just a bunch of cool stuff coming on. I got something dropping in the winter. That I'll be sharing, so look out for that. And yeah, just a bunch of, you know, just me harassing you to vote until November 3rd. So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yes. And Skittlez, where can they find us?
Yes, you can find us at Ladies Who Bronche on Instagram, Ladies Bronche on Twitter, Ladies Who Bronche on YouTube, at Julissa on Instagram, and at The Real Skittlez on Instagram as well. That's with a Z at the end.
Yes. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in to our first episode, season 5. So much more to come. We zooming through it. So until next time, bronche.